So, in today's lesson, I highly appreciate that you understand the basic principles of settling into the real home. The real home is the real self, and the real self is pure consciousness, truth, permanent peace, happiness, love, and the wisdom that outflows in our life, in thinking, in speaking, and acting. That is the ultimate destination of our human life. So, we have to say goodbye to the apparent or the false home. As we understand, the home of body is the physical home. The home of the mind is calmness. And the home of intellect is wisdom and the right knowledge. And our real home is the real self. Let us understand again, let me repeat it again. The real home, the physical home, that in which we live, is only the home of the body, the physical body. Now ask a question, am I the body? The home of our sense organs is knowledge, free from likes and dislikes, free from love and hate, free from pain and the pleasure. What that means? You see the sky, the ocean, you feel the wind, cool, chilling. You see the birds. You see the fish in the aquarium that you have. You see the cat. You see that when we see all these things through our sense organs, there is enchanting. There is a sense of not only belongingness, but a sense of affection. Now the same sense organ sees our relationship. This brother, that brother, two are different. This son, that son. This daughter, that daughter. Does your son or a daughter says you to feel like this? Or you have your open wrong notion inside the head? So our master says the real home of the mind is calmness. In that state of the calmness, goes through the sense organ and sees the outer world. What happens? The mind does not create any likes and dislikes, duality and a division. So, the real home of the sense organ is only the knowledge that we receive from the external world. And the real home of the mind is calmness. Let anything happen in the world. The first thing to understand, is mind calm? Is mind not influenced by the turmoil or the pleasure in the world outside? How that will happen when we discover the real home of the intellect. And the real home of the intellect is not biased opinion, judgment, but it is wisdom. It is the right knowledge. What is Eastern wisdom? I have been repeating again and again. Sense organs are the instruments of knowledge by which we receive knowledge of the external world. Further, mind is an instrument of knowledge by which we know or acquire the knowledge of the subtle world. Subtle world means subtler than the physical and the material world. You see, simple way. And the Eastern wisdom is an instrument of knowledge to discover the real self. Can I find the real self by sense organ? No. You see, even I cannot see the truth that the sky is not blue by the sense organ. It has to be understood by the mind and ultimately the intellect. But when this intellect and the mind lives in their respective homes of calmness and wisdom, all our anxiety, duality, conflict, etc., are dropped by itself, like the darkness goes away by light. Darkness is absence of light, so the ignorance is absence of knowledge. Absence of, you can say ignorance is incomplete knowledge. We know something about ourselves, but we do not know what is right and truth. So our master says this intellect needs to be properly understood. So intellect are of two types. Or you can say our intellect follows two types of truth. Intellect follows two types of truth. Or even we can say our faith in the intellect are of two types. What are these two types? Intellect says, believe me because I can reason. What to believe? That the person I am seeing is crazy. The person I am seeing I hate. The person I am seeing I don't like. The person, when he comes to me or she comes to me, gives me anxiety. Now see, so I have a faith in that intellect which reasons wrongly, and I enter into conflict. It is based on the information that I have. It is also based on my preferences. It is also based on my likes and dislikes. Are you getting it? Our topic today is to apply those principles by which we can drop false home and we continue to live into our real home. So we understood the real home of the intellect is wisdom and the right knowledge. So we have started understanding our own intellect or the faith that are of two types. One intellect, one faith, that it says I have reasoned out this guy is crazy, hence I dislike it, hence I don't want to be with this guy. This is my own opinion, preferences, bias, attitude. We should challenge this intellect and ask the intellect who the hell you are, judging other people, making a judgment, passing on the judgment. Not only that, but because I pass on the judgment in my head, in my intellect. So intellect keeps juggling with likes and dislikes, pain and the pleasure, preferences and prejudices, and that creates lot of problem. That hides my real self, and I create an identity with my false self. That is one of the major cause of anxiety. Look at the fish as it is. Don't label it. Don't name it. See the fish in your aquarium that you have as it is. You see the life is coming to you. You see that in that state of the calmness, without any preferences and prejudice, you see that fish. Seeing in that way brings you closer to the living fish. Now add some spices of likes and dislikes, preferences and prejudices, and then see what happens. Now apply the same to the people, to event outside in our daily life. Without preferences, likes and dislikes, and the memory of the past, and with likes and dislikes, preferences and prejudices in your daily life. You see as it is. A person you see, you don't see that he is crazy. Then what happens? He does not remain as a human being. He becomes a crazy. Why he becomes a crazy? Because my intellect has chosen by reason. But why my intellect has chosen with a reason based on the past memory? Why shouldn't I see the person as a person? Why? To keep my intellect with the right knowledge and the wisdom. Not a single person you will find becomes crazy at some time. You cannot find a single person who does not have good qualities, good attitude at other times. This is right knowledge. So when we follow this right knowledge, then what happens? One, and how to follow that right knowledge. So our master says, mind, we have to follow this right knowledge based on the Eastern wisdom to drop that wrong notion. My master used to say that you are in a closed room and there is a hole in that small hole in the room. And through that hole you peep outside into the world. So when you are peeping, you see one part of the world. You don't see the whole picture. The intellect should not be imprisoned to see through the whole of likes and dislikes, through the whole of hate and love, through the whole of preferences and prejudices. Why? Because it harms me and my life. Do you see it? Do you see it? We started understanding the intellect are of two types. One intellect on which we have a tremendous faith, in which we pass on the judgment and we see the world by peeping into the hole of likes and dislikes. No, we don't want that intellect. Just, your mind drops that idea of likes, dislikes, preferences, prejudices once you understand it clearly. And now the same guy comes to your house, you welcome. You are not peeping through the hole of likes and dislikes, but you are living into awareness. So the intellect is settled into the wisdom. Are you getting it? So when the intellect, based on the past impression, perceives the world, understands the world, it creates wrong notion. Wrong notion because we find the reason from the intellect is based on our own personal perception of likes and dislikes. It will take some time, but it is going to happen. Then what happens? What is the result? Then we feel anxious, we feel stressed because of our own reason. It is because of our own making. Then we like this, we dislike that because of our own reason. Then we hate, we love, we hate this, we love that because of our own reason. Peeping means the intellect, the first kind of the intellect, sees the partial truth. Where is the next question comes to your mind? Can I see the absolute truth? What is that absolute truth? Is the real self. To abide in my real home. So, even though I see everything, first thing, I stop peeping the world and the people and the events based on my preferences. I substitute and replace the principles of Eastern wisdom in the intellect to see the world outside. And when that happens, what happens then? First thing, the intellect is simple and pure and casual and aware. The way you see your own aquarium lying in your home, the fish and the cat and other creatures that you like and love. The intellect perceives with the simplicity, with love, with purity. What is pure intellect? Now we are talking of the second type of the intellect. See that when we understand this, then we start practicing this 24/7 during the waking hours, all the time, with pure intellect. You see others, but you are also seeing if the intellect is pure. What is pure intellect? You are seeing the world and yourself without likes and dislikes, without even thinking. The guy who is in front of me caused hatred last year. You don't carry that burden so that you can allow the real self to reflect in your intellect, to keep you free from anxiety, duality, conflict, problem, pain, suffering. I see that intellect is known as Medha in Eastern wisdom. And from the Medha, we go to Bodha. Bodha means awareness or awakened. So now you have understood that we are using the second type of the intellect, which is not affected by likes and dislikes, knowing milk as milk and the water as water, knowing the human being as a human being. not influenced by likes and dislikes, not influenced by religion, by cult, by dogma, by different labels of wife, husband, son, daughter, etc., etc. So when you start living in, what will happen? The first type of the intellect that only peeps have a limited perception expands completely. Then you have a holistic view through the intellect, going to the mind, mind going through the senses, senses going to the world. So once we understand that we have to replace our own intellect that reasons and perceives the world with the likes and dislikes to an intellect that is pure and simple, not influenced by my preferences and bias, but it perceives the world as it is. The next question comes, what is that knowledge? By which we abide in our real home, that is our real self, which is of the nature of peace, happiness, love, wisdom, truth, when it is available, all the time. Where it is available, everywhere. What is the location? All locations. What is that state? Awakening. How simple. So now that knowledge starts from the teacher. That is what Eastern wisdom says. But don't misinterpret who is a teacher in Eastern wisdom. So now you are a seeker. So it is good to tell you about guru, teacher, or the master and a teacher tradition before we should proceed further. But keep your mind that now we want a knowledge. So how to receive the knowledge, we have to find an answer. That is why sometime when I say I lived with my master for 26 years, then people say, oh, he seems to be crazy. He could not understand in a single day. That is why he lived with the master. No, that is not the reason. So now understand the guru, and the teacher in Eastern wisdom is known as guru. The word guru means moving from ignorance to knowledge. Anything, any object, any living being, any book that helps you to remove the ignorance and settle into the knowledge of the real self is guru. Why I should talk to you? Why don't you ask a question? So simple reason. Real self is inside you and you are doing the practices to discover your own nature. That you don't know. So the external agency is required. And that external factor is the guru. So what is the condition? The intellect should be ready to receive the knowledge. When the intellect is ready to receive the knowledge, when you have a purified intellect, did you get it? Yes. Until now, I am your guru. My guru is also there. And gurus and his guru is also there. Who is the ultimate guru? The ultimate guru is the real self in you that you cannot see. And through an external agency, through the tradition of this master and a disciple tradition, I am speaking to you, to your real self. So, this tradition and this teaching is that you are, I am talking to myself, means real self. The greatest guru is the real self lies within you. Answer to that question is big yes. Because you are not able to communicate with your real self. And this knowledge coming from the tradition is helping you to realize that real self and communicate with your own real self. How that happens. How that process takes place. So that process, we say it is satsang. Satsang is literally translated as company of the truth, company of the real self. See that? The words used in Sanskrit, they directly hit at the core of the wisdom, the knowledge. Company of the real self. Okay, I'm little bit understanding but what do you mean? Company of the real self removes the delusion. So satsang, what is the goal of the satsang? To remove the delusion. What is delusion? That appears true but it is not true. It appears true that I hate this guy, but it is not true. I like this guy or a girl, but this is not true. Because the like and dislike causes attachment and detachment. And then the mind is moving outside, perceiving through a small hole. So without removing the delusion, we cannot love ourselves. We cannot find real self. And without loving real self within, we cannot leave delusion. Without moving the mind and the heart cannot leave desires, likes and dislikes. So if we want to remove the duality, conflict, then learn how to awaken to the true nature. Learning comes from love. It must have an element of love. The love comes when the delusion is removed. Delusion is removed by listening to the principles who personalizes the teaching for every seeker. And that personalized teaching coming from the teacher is known as satsang. And satsang removes the delusion and gives us the knowledge. That knowledge goes to the intellect. So I discussed there are two types of the intellect. One intellect gives the reason based on my likes and dislikes, hate and the love preferences. That is the result. Result is anxiety, duality, conflict, problem and the pain. And I go too far from the real home. I go outside. That is why satsang. Satsang, company of the real self. How to receive that? From a teacher, listening, because he personalizes the teaching. We can ask another question. We can go a little deeper into the satsang. So, satsang not only is simply listening. What happens when you listen to these principles from a teacher again and again, again and again, again and again? The first thing, that your mind cultivates love for the real self. And when it cultivates the love for real self, then the intellect does not run after its own opinion and judgment of likes and dislikes and ideas to hate and the love. Does it happen by listening? Yes. Why it happens by listening? Because these principles are eternal. They are the natural principles of our real self, your own true nature, that is lying behind the veil of your mind and the intellect. That is the first powerful result of the satsang. That is why I realized this listening to the teacher for 26 years, again and again, again and again. What happened? The mind and the intellect settled there. First, you can say the first result or the benefit. And the second result, it gives you an immutable peace. Why it gives you immutable peace? Can you ever think of it just by listening? It does not mean that we have to leave the practice. Continue, do the practice every day without fail. If you find more time, repeat the practice. So the second result is peace. Where is that peace? What peace does? It removes the impurity of the heart. Why it removes the impurity of the heart? Now the mind is not running after the likes and dislikes. It doesn't want to go there. Why? Because it discovered the peace within. So it purifies the heart. And the third result comes by listening and contemplation of these principles. The knowledge of the real self takes us to the real home. You are listening and doing the practice days after days. What happens one day? That false home drops because it does not exist. And then the mind settles in the real home that I covered in the first talk. This is what happens. That is why, based on the traditional principles of the Eastern wisdom, you are listening to the talk followed by the practice, again talk and again practice. And sometime it is good to continue the one practice couple of weeks, so that I can open the secret lies in that practice through the talks and the principles. Going further, let us understand from a different perspective what we are understanding, how to apply those principles in life to remain settled in the real home. We started with the intellect, or the having a faith in two types of intellect. There we have to make a choice. Once we have made a choice, then you are listening to the teacher. I made it very clear who is the teacher is sitting in your heart deeper inside that you don't know. That's why I am there. Even after realization, we can be together. Why? So we exchange the communication of the real self with the real self. So you see that first is the love I discussed just now, second is the knowledge, and third is the action. So as you progress on the path, you will find out that the love and the knowledge is present in all our action. You will find out the action and the love is present in the knowledge. And you will reveal the knowledge and the action is present in the love. Example. A person knocks the door. You know that person, but the intellect says, I hate this guy. Anyhow, please come. So what you did? Your action, your knowledge, and your emotion, they all are standing apart. So all problems, pain and pleasure, anxiety, duality, conflict, this, that, is because these three, the love, action, and the knowledge, are working separately. Where? In us, not in others. So what happens? By listening to these talks from the teacher again and again, opens your mind, the heart, mind becomes pure, opens your intellect, the intellect goes with the wisdom of the knowledge. So when these two go together, all your actions and expressions also aligns with the knowledge and the love from within. And then what happens? Why, how that happens? And what happens then? Then what happens? The mind continues with the discipline and educating the mind itself. When it is disciplining and educating the mind by practice and listening, what happens? You drop old habits, your attitude, your behavior. That is the cause of the problem, anxiety, duality, and a conflict. And when you have a love for the real self, that removes all the distractions of the mind. Normally in obsession with something else, or we say, I have a crush on that person, example. So that crush keeps the mind emotionally charged. It is, another word is obsession. Obsession, another word is addiction. Why shouldn't I have a crush for my own real self? So when I have a crush for my real self, then what happens? Then it removes all the distractions, and the knowledge removes the ignorance. So satsang is greater than anything, even the practice, because the satsang hits directly the home of the senses, home of the mind, home of the intellect, and the home of the real self. The same satsang means, I just clarified, the same satsang pacifies all 5 causes of suffering. What are the 5 causes of suffering? We say it is avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesha. Let us start from the 5th one. Abhinivesha. Your envelope, it is open, then you put a gum there, and then you fix that envelope. It's fully closed, and you put inside a check. And you want to be sure that it is fully gummed and it cannot be opened. So that gum settles the two sides of the paper so that it is closed. So now, in the same way, think of strong likes, strong obsession for the body, that is your gum. And the mind settles with that gum in the body, then it declares, I am the body, and this body is me. It is your car, but you never say, I am my car. Do you say? You say, this is my home, but you never say, this home is me. Are you getting it? So let us see how the Master makes us understand. So the moment that gum of likes and dislikes and obsession and having a crush on the body, I say, I am the body. And the body is constantly changing. Factually, we know this body one day will die, so I have a fear of death. From where the fear has come? Because that gum of likes and dislikes, gum of likes, gum of being crushed by the body, because I have a crush on the body. And when the mind claims I am the body, then I have a fear of death. And when I have a fear of death, then I have likes and dislikes. Then I am also in anxiety. One of the major causes of anxiety is the fear of death. Did you understand? So by listening to the teacher again and again on different principles, absorbed by the pure intellect, received by the pure mind, will change the entire life. So that is why we say that satsang pacifies 5 causes of suffering. So this is the first cause. And vidya smita rag dvesh. Then now see, because another reason for our suffering is raga dvesha, attachment, detachment, likes and dislikes. We divide the world into 2 sides of a pendulum. We see the pendulum, it moves from one side to the other, and you stretch it on one side and leave it. Now it continuously moves on both the sides. One side is like, other is dislike, one is hate, other is love, third, one is anxiety, third is temporary pleasure, like this. So the mind first creates likes and dislikes, and then one dislike and likes gave rise to millions of movement to the mind that dictates the intellect, and the intellect starts working with its own reason. That is what I discussed in the beginning. So this is the second problem, is also pacified of likes and dislikes by regular understanding, listening, and absorbing this knowledge from the teacher. So we have covered the three. First is the mind is totally settled and absorbed into the body, claims that I am the body, and then likes and dislikes. This likes and dislikes causes pain and the pleasure. 3. Fourth one is the ego, I-ness, egoism. When the ego is hurt, can you imagine? False ego is hurt, false home is hurt, or is appreciated, or feels elated. Two things, insert and praise. So that ego is constantly looking outside the insert or the praise. Even a slight insert, which other person does not mean actually, but my mind takes this as insert, as an appreciation, causes too much of pain in our life, and that is also the reason of anxiety. So the fourth one and the fifth one is known as ignorance, avidya, not knowing my real nature. So what happens? By listening, you get two things. Fundamentally, I have already explained what are the different benefits. When the intellect shines with the wisdom that we receive by listening. But fundamentally, it gives you a sense of permanent joy inside your heart. One. And the second, every moment you find a sense of auspiciousness. Sense of auspiciousness? In a thought, I can say that everything is right. Everything, whatever is happening, is right. In that particular moment, in that event, in that relationship, your mind, your intellect, and your heart perceives that sense of auspiciousness. Means what? You are very near to approaching the real home. You know, sometime even a good person, a kind person, a helping person lives in a bad company. It may be because of the birth, maybe because of the society, maybe because of so many external and internal factors. But one day, these good and the kind people are introduced to the principles of the Eastern wisdom, and they start the journey, continue the journey to find that real home. Not everyone. We say in India there is a kind of a pearl that is found in the head of a snake, cobra. The snake is extremely poisonous. Still, the pearl inside does not become poisonous. That is the nature of the real self, my friend. That cannot be polluted. Let this intellect settle into this wisdom. When you are settled into that wisdom, the mind may become crazy, but you live into that state of calmness and peace. Then what happens? Now see the result. Rose flower, you put it into your right hand. So that rose flower does not say, I will not send the fragrance to the left hand. Do you see that? Look at the sun. Sun does not say that I don't give light to the people who are bad, and I always give light to the people who are good. There is rationalization by our own reason, not by the teachings of the Eastern wisdom. So the teacher and the knowledge of the Eastern wisdom treats everyone equally. Why? Because of the real self. The teaching may be personalized and changed, but treatment is equal. In that equality, we find the heart moves with the kindness, with the love, with the compassion, what Buddha says. The intellect moves with the wisdom. In that state, can you ever imagine whether there is an anxiety? No anxiety, not at all. No suffering, no egoism, no crush, only truth, peace, happiness, love, wisdom. We are settled into the real self. So, when the ignorance is removed, we find the real self. When we remove the duality in the mind, we find the real self. When we drop that egoism, we find the real self. So, listening to the talk and contemplating with eyes closed, then what happens? Every time you contemplate and reflect, it drops naturally those challenges, those impressions in the mind, in the intellect, which is causing the anxiety. So a tremendous faith in yourself is required, that you understand the principle. I said simply, the physical home is the home of the body. The home of the sense organ is to have the knowledge, simply. I see a wall as a wall, I see the water as a water, I see you as you. As a wonderful human being, that's all. So I don't give too much of trouble to the mind to have likes in this. And what is the real home of the mind? Calmness, non-duality. What is the home of the intellect? Is the wisdom. So when everyone finds their real home, you find the real home, you find the real self. You find the real self. So in the next talk, we will go a little deeper. Pick up this so that you have a clarity of understanding. Clarity of understanding. What is that clarity of understanding? With reference to the intellect. When you have a reference to the intellect, then what happens? When you have a reference with the reference to the intellect, then your mind, your life, your attitude, your behavior, your attitude starts moving in a direction to find the true nature. And when that happens, I would say 80 or 90% of the challenges goes away. What is left is the deep past impressions. Deep past impressions. And that impression can be removed by the further teaching and the practice. So I'm just using the different words. Real home, false home. Two types of intellect, or two types of the faith on the intellect. The intellect is peeping the world, or the intellect is knowing the world with the wisdom. Then satsang. Satsang. Before satsang, the master and a disciple tradition. What is that? The real self is already in you. You are listening to the real self through the teacher to find out the real home. And that listening is known as satsang. And the satsang is, we have understood from a different perspective. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Bring your awareness on the right hand, your awareness on the left, and even with eyes open, and just see. His body is settled, the mind is settled, the sense organs are settled in their respective home. Be happy and keep smiling.